The ACC, tank conference of the college football world. So bad overall that Dabo Swinney has permanent stage 20 arthritis trying to carry it. The Big 12, chaos conference of the college football world. A complete war zone where everyone wins and loses at the same time, where the best team can end up the worst and vice versa in a 3-month time span. While the only constant in college football is chaos, these conferences are often categorized by these features, such as the case with another conference where, at least until they had to sap from the Pac-12, 3 kings of the land relished in their riches, and everyone else laid in their own filth from incompetent leaders and ownership. The only place you have to look for this is the space between the different leagues principal in Canadian football, where you have been led to is none other than the Big Ten Conference. One of the founding fathers of college football, the Big Ten is home to many of the oldest and most prestigious programs, mainly the former. 150 years and you're alive to remember 0 the good ones for a majority of them. Like Chicago fans. No, I'm not talking about the Bears, but rather the Maroons college football program. The home of a former powerhouse team from 100 years ago and Heisman winner Jay Bermuda Triangle. Chicago to this day has more Heismans than Tennessee, unfortunately. They're arguably playing better football today than their NFL counterparts, because they don't exist anymore. Technically it does, but as a D3 program only, referenced by your grandpa when talking about being drafted in the war. More important for the sake of this conference, they seceded from it following World War II because they'd rather storm the beaches again than play Ohio State. Speaking of which, the Big Ten as you know it is completely and utterly dominated by 3 powerhouses of the college football world. Ohio State, a direct cause of horrid traffic in the state of Ohio. Michigan, the shadow to keep the bucknuts in check. And to a lesser extent, Penn State, floating around bad and great at the same time. These 3 teams hold the conference together in our current age in college football and in ages past. It's like the 4 elements with the Fire Nation being the SEC. These teams have been the biggest threat to the Southeastern Dominion and it shows through their past, such as... When referring to the Big Ten in any capacity, the first team that come to mind for 99% of the college football world is the nutter butter nut jobs known as Ohio State. One of the most successful programs of all time, it's a rare time in history for them to be seen as vulnerable. Excluding the COVID year where they made the Natty, Ohio State hasn't been seen with less than 10 wins since 2004. They own 40 titles in the conference and are tied for the most Heisman winners in the sport. They are seen as a school that even if their entire team suddenly breaks their legs, they've got a legion of backups still strong enough to win the Big Ten. Ironically, they also hold a fan base that immediately blames injuries for all of their shortcomings the moment their 4-string receiver has an aching testicle. Despite their everlasting dominion over their conference, Ohio State isn't safe from the football gods in their smiting hands, such as the existence of Clemson, which gave them their worst postseason loss in 2016, and many years earlier, spoiled the legacy of Woody Hayes. Turns out punching a kid for scoring on you isn't exactly the wisest idea. Sometimes Ohio State likes to terminally shit themselves when it's convenient to them, like against Michigan State in 1998, which kept them out of the national title game, or against Iowa in 2017, which kept them out of the playoff, or against Purdue in 2018, same result as the last. Results like that make you wonder if Arch Schlichter was gambling again like it was back in the 90s and 80s, which put him so rock bottom you could call him Maryland Athletics. Jim Tressel set the great precedent for the program if you pretend tattoos didn't exist. You lost your chance at another title due to them. If only you'd waited 10 years, this would be okay. Maybe next time that's under consideration, tattoo your record versus Michigan because you need all the motivation necessary. The Wolverines are the ankle lock that's preventing the Buckeyes from becoming the super Goliath of the sport, owned by them both all time and recently, which is humiliating considering you got outscored by a team with no offense. The only solution Ohio State could come up with was for it to be illegal for Michigan to win, along with playing at noon. Michigan's continuous troll job doesn't do too much to take away from how dominant Ohio State is both historically and now, and all it took to reach the top again was $20 million. And the everlasting embarrassment of this kid.
It's on the way. No good. He hooked it. And Georgia is going to survive.
Though you have this to still think about, you'll always have the Urban Meyer days. Nobody can take that away from you. All too similar to a bird, the Michigan Wolverines are seen as a team with wings on their helmets. Sometimes these wings are that of a penguin or a dodo bird, and more often than not, we see that of a hawk. This was especially true in 2024, where they are brandishing the Hawkeye tradition of no offense. Despite these features, Michigan is one of the only 2 blue bloods of the Big Ten, being the only team with over 1,000 wins, 45 conference titles, and 3 Heismans, one of which being Travis Hunter without 24/7 coverage from SportsCenter. The Big House, their home turf, holds more than any other, with all the space in the world for fighting other teams. But with places like the locker rooms to do that, why does it matter? Rivalries like the Little Brown Jug hold history to them in the sense that Michigan always wins them. Michigan usually always wins anyway, as Bo Schlembuckler's era brought upon layers of happiness for the Wolverine faithful in the 70s and 80s. Following his retirement, Michigan's high standards put many coaches to the test, some of which lived on for a while, but only if you forget the 2000s were a thing.
Snap good, the whole kick! Oh! The kick is the Mountaineers are going to try to take it back to the big house! To the big house! 20, 15, the Mountaineers have just beat the Michigan Wolverines!
Not quite enough to make a Michigan fan cry, but pushes the story to the Rich Rodriguez era, which in turn makes them cry. An era full of scandals, football death, and Ohio State completely dismantling you at every turn. Brady Hoke's era was a similar story, and so was Jim Harbaugh's for a while. It eventually became a cycle of decent seasons where you got executed by the nut jobs. You own them in most of your history, but this stretch certainly tipped the scales. Eventually, through the efforts of Cade McNamara of all people, Michigan finally got the jump on the Buckeyes and ended their pain and suffering for some time. If that wasn't enough though, hail to Connor Stallions! Through his efforts, Michigan eventually pushed onward to win the national title in 2023. Whether or not you want to believe this is an asterisk title, the alternative is Michigan sharing the last natty with Nebraska. So Michigan fans will likely continue to claim it regardless of the verdict. Today's Michigan team is an offense outclassed by the New Orleans Saints, but still accidentally finds ways to beat the Buckeyes. Could always be worse though. Look at your basketball program. Rumors are Juwan Howard is still throwing punches. We are kinda mid actually. The prime example of recency bias. Calling them a juggernaut in the Big Ten makes them seem like they're on the level of Ohio State and Michigan, but it's more like comparing Blue Bell ice cream to the great value brand you find at Walmart. Still significantly better than most, however, most of the program's history was categorized by the tenure of Joe Paterno, who pretty much spent his entire life as the head coach at Penn State. Penn State fans older than 10 years old spend their entire life idolizing him because he was the Bill Snyder to Kansas State version of the Big Ten. He put the program on the map. He gave them multiple national titles, with the most recent being all the way back in 1986, a drought somehow longer than Notre Dame's and one they're still trying to undo with minimal effort. Speaking of the Irish, this success continued from the program's tradition from Notre Dame status to the Big Ten. He'll probably live the rest of his life there pending a monumental degenerate scandal that he doesn't address leading up to his canning. Right?
Oh my goodness!
This one single scandal set the program back at least a decade and tarnished the program for what's probably going to be all of eternity. The only way you make something like this go away is if you win a title. But as today's big game James Franklin tells us, that's very unlikely. Franklin gets to earn the credit of getting Penn State back on the map in a shorter time span than anticipated. To be fair, we are talking about the same guy who somehow made Vandy ranked at one point. Penn State's reputation today is a team that always finds themselves in the national conversation. The problem? It's for all the wrong reasons. Every time the nihilistic Lions find the chance to prove that they can reach the mountaintop, they do like their crowd in the big games and white out, in avalanche format. Unlike Brian Kelly, they don't get blown out but rather collapse at the hottest moments of the game. If you give James Franklin credit for anything, is that he does indeed show up in the big games.
As long as 49, Aller hit as he throws, and it is intercepted!
But as I'm sure you know, it always ends the same way.
Snap and hold are good. The kick is good.
Ironically enough, despite the permanent collapsing stage, Penn State has a more recent Big Ten title appearance than either Ohio State or Michigan. Like I said, James somewhat shows up to the big games. Boy, I sure do wish we could end the video here. You've now seen 3 of the prestigious programs the Big Ten has to offer, which means you've seen all the prestigious programs the Big Ten has to offer. As we've given you a tour of the Krusty Krab, it's time to go to the Chum Bucket, where many teams with a history as phenomenal as the Dinosaurs, which ends the same way. Death for all. How the Big Ten hasn't cut all these teams and called themselves the Three Kings Conference is well beyond me. What if any of these teams contributed to Ohio State's playoff run to earn even a single dollar? I guess they lost well. See for yourself and cover an eye so only one has to be subjected to their history. Starting with
Minnesota!
Row the boat. No, seriously, row it. We're gonna drown if you don't. It's hard to believe this program was once a dynasty, but it's the truth. If your great-great-great-grandpa's still around, he might be able to tell you about it. But watching today's version of Minnesota probably gave him so much dementia that he still thinks Nick Saban is coaching at Kent State. Eventually, the 30s and 40s start to wear off and you come back to reality. Everything past the 1960 national title is a sign of an era that Minnesota will never be able to get back to. They have the coolest names for rivalry games, but nobody cares for them because they're either too lopsided or both teams are fighting for bowl eligibility. Their last Rose Bowl appearance was 1961, and before the 7-5 Merchant and PJ Flecker ride, Minnesota only had one 10-win season. You're called the Golden Gophers, but the only gold is fool's gold. Every accomplishment and record past the 60s was a turd stain on the program. Bowl droughts, 3 and 4 win seasons, and whatever the absolute shit the Tim Brewster era was. An era so bad that he still has yet to be a head coach again. The most prominent year for the squad was 2019, a year where literally every analyst was talking about it because nobody has ever lived to see a good Minnesota team. You get one guess, and only one guess only, as to how this ended. Breaking news, you're probably right. What's stunning is that you're the reason people thought Kenny Burns had merit as a head coach. He went on to win 1 game in 2 years and go into credit card debt. You've likely caused the same for your fans who've gambled on you to cover. Your stance in modern college football history is Muhammad Ibrahim, Coy Perrick, and being a stepping stone for Lou Holtz. You cement yourself as this type of program because it took you up until recently to build a stadium for yourself. Plus, your players had a Golden Gopher Diddy party back in 2016. Just like most of your history, we'd all like to forget that happened. Speaking of new stadiums, I'm surprised you even have a budget to use for renovations. Where are you getting the money from? Your program ain't getting it for you, or any sports for that matter. Loan sharks are bad, kids! I feel like the twist here is that they're loaning off of Penn State in an effort to get their ass beat less than usual. Their team color is purple as symbolism for the color of their ass cheeks in December following another college football season. They have an all-time losing record. Shocker. Including an incredible record of the biggest losing streak in college football of 34 games. So long, it's literally got a fucking name. Unbreakable. Even after breaking it, they've spent their time in the college football dumpster. Like an episode of Final Destination on repeat, you'll know they'll die and you'll know how they do it too. Their peak was the era of Pat Fitzgerald, which reached its apex in a 10-win regular season. That of which was ended by losing by 39 to the champion of life. We could pretend that the COVID year was their greatest season, but if we do that, we have to bring up the fact that he won 4 games total the following 2 seasons. He'll probably live the rest of his life there, pending a monumental degenerate scandal that he doesn't address leading up to, oh my citrus bowl's sake again! Funny that a hazing allegation was what got him canned over a 1-win season. At least they know their place, an academic school that serves the same role as Vandy in the SEC. David Brown coming in and instantly winning a bowl was a bigger shock than Oregon coming in and instantly winning the Big Ten. But at least your stadium will soon hold 50,000. The Wildcats will be lucky to see 100 people in the stands. 10 are probably squirrels. What an awfully convenient time to make this video for the Badgers. A program that has actually managed to have pretty good seasons is today finding themselves basking in their own filth. This program was a vacant lot before the 90s, as they did nothing but make a Rose Bowl sometimes, a decade or so. This was until the 90s, where after several experimental seasons, Barry Alvarez finally made way for Wisconsin to have some strains of consistent success. No titles though, as that is reserved for Michigan and Ohio State. He did have a Heisman in Ron Dane, who to this day holds the rushing yards and a career record. Good for them. Once Alvarez transitioned to athletic director, the program's strains of success were few and far between now. Burt Bielema, of all people, handed Wisconsin several great seasons, but he too fell victim to the different leagues principle and bailed for pig time. Gary Anderson came to take his place, he's gone. After him was Paul Christ, whose entire legacy revolves around going undefeated in 2017. But we know how that ends.
Hornibrook delivers, intercepted, Ohio State, Damon Webb.
Sorry Badgers, there's no room for another school of trophies, so the Nuts had to kill the entire Big Ten this year. Once Christ got fired for daring to lose 3 games, they put their money on Luke Fickell. And guess what? Disaster. That 22-year bowl streak was about the only thing you had left to hold on to, and now even that is gone. Your offense has been comparable to that of Iowa's, as if you're still trying to rely on Jonathan Taylor to bail you out. It's been 7 years, he's not coming back. Being a run-heavy team without the meat on the roster to back it up has led Wisconsin to go from one of the only signs of life in the conference to a total pushover that not even a Lincoln Riley defense is afraid of. If I were a Wisconsin fan, I'd jump around and jump straight into one of the many lakes around the area. Bad. Very, very bad. So bad that it wouldn't surprise me if it showed up on someone's autopsy report. Death by football. An engineering school with the only push for recruiting being a giant-ass bass drum that hardly gets played because Purdue can't score. They got the name Spoiler Maker for being so bad that every time they beat a ranked team, it's a monumental upset. Despite being the team that produced Jim Everett and Drew Brees, the Soiler Makers as I call them can't get out of their own way. Purdue is the first team to win a game on radio broadcast and still plays like it's 1921. We're coming up on a full century since Purdue won a Big Ten title, and they've been closer to being winless than winning it since. They're tortured by having a rivalry with Notre Dame, and you can only imagine how skewered that is in favor of the Irish. They've been on the losing end of just about everything for so long that they've forgotten what winning felt like. Up until now, I haven't mentioned that the Big Ten was once split into two divisions, the East with the Juggernauts and a little extra poo-poo on the side, and the West, which made the Tank Conference look elite in hindsight. It was such a mess over there that even with 4 losses, Purdue still made the Big Ten title. Yes, they were just a sacrificial lamb to Michigan, but how does this shit even happen? Said coach who brought you there, Jeff Brom, got so tired of your bullshit that he thought that Tank Conference was an upgrade. Purdue exists as a fragment of Big Ten incompetence and nothing more. They exist, and to pretend like they do anything else other than that is a lie. It's like watching the endless 8-episode saga of Haruhi Suzumiya, on repeat for decades. Being a floating piece of mediocrity is likely a better place than where they stand now. The Ryan Walters saga saw a top 40 recruiting class go to waste. And now it'll be up to Barry Odom of all people to recover the scraps of what's left to turn the program back to what it's known for. The Music City Bowl winner. You know, there's always basketball season. The Fighting Illini. Just as replaceable as any other lower-rate Big Ten program, whose decent seasons are as rare as mentally stable Danganronpa fans. Just like their most famous player on the field, they are a galloping ghost when it comes to the college football world, appearing once every 10 years before returning to the abyss. While they produce legends such as Dick Butkus and Jeff George, who's been a part of more franchises than LeBron, the Fighting themselves, Illini, continue to struggle to hold together a consistent program. The program right now is like a gas station, as coaches go there for 5 seasons, if that, before bouncing onward to their next destination. They haven't seen an outright Big Ten title since the 50s, and while they did get a share of the title in 2001, Michigan ensured that they knew their place under their heel. Ever since, it's been more of the same. An abundance of failed seasons under the rug which made many consider why they ever even lifted the television ban. They'd make the Rose Bowl one year, then follow it up by losing to a G5 school for funsies. Different songs, but the same tune with the inevitable hit the reset button. Even forcing players to play while injured didn't do them any good, but all but ensured their coaches won't stick around very long. They've garnered the reputation of being the team labeled on the calendar as Homecoming Squad. While the past forever has been brutal for the Illini faithful, Big Bert Bielema returned to the Big Ten 4 years ago in an attempt to right the ship for them. He's done a decent job so far, setting up Illinois as a potential playoff team in 2025, and as an added bonus, made an SEC coach crash out in their bowl game. If history tells us anything, this will all but guarantee a 5-7 season, followed by Bielema returning to Arkansas because Sam Pittman got fired. But who knows? If Indiana can win 10 games, Illinois can hold together a piece of consistency. Speaking of which, the football gods had to try real hard to create something on this earth so unfathomably terrible. Before there was such a thing as the Star Wars trilogy or an anime called Love Tyrant, we had Indiana football. Stuck in the realm of the wet substance at the bottom of the trash bag, you'd find more of a backbone in Jellyfish Fields than you would in Bloomington. 2 Big Ten titles dating back to the 50s and 60s are the lone pieces you can find in the Hoosier Trophy Room, the fewest amount in the conference. Besides Anthony Thompson, it seems like your players are held back by your own incompetence until they reach the Pro League, where their potential is finally unsealed. Antoine Randall L. did a cool thing where he was the first receiver to throw a touchdown pass. Neat. Got anyone else that could do that? You move forward with just as much ferocity as Hep's Rod, so much so that you're the only school in the conference to never see a Heisman Trophy in your possession. You're better off putting your trophy room in a closet outside of the facility because seeing it is more embarrassing than pretending you forgot to put it there. All of their recruiting discussions end with the same conclusion: pivoting to basketball. Illinois could tell you to do this too, but playing injured players doesn't do you any good. It's a mess all the same. 2019 was their best year before last season, and it ended with a loss to Chick-fil-A Pruitt. Imagine having to tell the recruits that your most prestigious season was capitalized by a loss to Charlie Brown's cousin. Thankfully, this didn't last too long, as 2024 paved the way for you to have your best season yet. 11 wins? A playoff appearance? You aren't allowed to enjoy football? Quickly, send him to the pits of South Bend!
Eminem. IPS. Begin. My name is Eminem and I like to rap.
You know, for what's worth, neither Vandy nor Kansas have made the playoffs, so take from that what you will. Just keep track of Kirk Cignetti's phone calls. It's a wonderful time for tight ends, ain't it? You know, it says something about your program when half of your one-liners around offense are about Iowa. 126 years of football mediocrity and not going anywhere anytime soon. You can go to an Iowa fan right now and hit them square in the face with a baseball bat, and they'll get right back up and ask why you tickled them. Any pen you could enforce on them has no effect compared to the constant strain of Iowa football. Just like many of their Big Ten brethren, most of their previous history can be summarized by terrible football with the one Rose Bowl every decade or so. The FWAA was kind enough to let Iowa share their only national title with LSU, despite not winning all their games. Their last Big Ten championship that isn't shared with their conference brethren dates back to 1985. The way voting for a championship has surely changed with the times, but one thing that has never changed is the Iowa offense. If they even had a mid-tier level offense, they would be championship contenders on a yearly basis. However, as we all know, their offense has the productivity of a snail and the urgency of a cow during mealtime. The only meal Hawkeye fans get to feast on is the constant 13-10 wins or losses over mid-tier Big Ten teams. Some may remember Hayden Fry for this style of offense, but many only know of the one more Nebraska loss away from a retirement home legend himself, Kirk Ferentz. Every year is the same process on repeat for him. Great defense that bails them out of their own offensive incompetence. Some years, like in 2009 and 2015, this process works and they manage to slide their way into a highly rated bowl game. But oftentimes, like the offense we know today, dies the moment it comes into contact with a decent offense. And we've seen just about every attempt possible to change it. Dozens of quarterbacks that can't throw more than 10 complete passes a game, many coordinators, including nepotism, which as you guessed, failed horribly. And even tried to hype the offense through campaigns like Drive for 325. All they had to do was average 25 points in the season, they didn't even come close. At this point, Iowa and their fans have accepted their reputation as revelation, and no matter how they change it, they'll always be our itty-bitty Citrus Bowl runner-up. Yet you will, you gonna go to the Citrus Bowl this year? Yet you will! From the shadows of Michigan's success is their younger brother who acts like world peace has been achieved every time they manage to beat them. None other than the Michigan State Spartans. Once a dynasty in the 50s and 60s, their legacy today is known as another stepping stone for Nick Saban, who never reaped any of his merit. They're a melting pot for elite NFL players like Kirk Cousins, Le'Veon Bell, and Bubba Smith. The only issue is that none of these guys carried them to the big trophy. While they did manage to make and win several conference championships, plus the added bonus of having as many playoff appearances as Penn State, their one contribution to playoff history is far less influential than Penn State's. They might as well have never been to the playoffs because just like their Big Ten brothers, they've never scored a point in the playoffs. Their entire rivalry with Michigan is based off of one play that we'll never see again.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
This was an incredible play, but the issue is that nowadays you fight harder in the tunnels after the game than during it. And you thought Ohio State was owned by Michigan. Dear Lord. More often than not, when the iron gets hotter, Michigan State throws themselves in the stove and burns themselves alive. The program keeps finding themselves in scandalous allegations in just about every heinous crime you could think of. DUIs, essays, and whatever unholy shit was going on during the Mel Tucker era. This program has been through far less embarrassment than say for Illinois or Indiana, but if Mark D'Antonio is the peak of what your lifetime of a fan has to offer, it's a less than ideal situation. Especially since your current team looks to be in the gutter with little sign of escape. Jonathan Smith has great coaching experience, but until Michigan State manages to prove that they're good for anything more than beating Michigan once every few years, it's gonna be a cycle on repeat. Sparty for lower liquor prices! Where do I even begin with you? Just because you joined the party late doesn't mean you are exempt from the torture. Especially because you know why. Nebraska is just like Ohio State and Michigan in the sense that they are a blue blood program. One that's been around for centuries with lots of winning behind them. The only problem with that is, unlike Michigan and Ohio State, all the winning is behind them. Their fan base is delusional in the idea that they are just as strong as they were back in the 90s, and that just isn't true anymore. It's not enough for them to just be relevant in the college football conversation either. They have to be the central talk of the nation. Look at the comments from this video, and that'll tell you everything and more that you need to know about how salty these fans get when you tell them facts as truths. If you use a win over Tennessee as a basis for how good or bad you are today, you're bad 100% of the time. Nebraska has no doubt dominated the Big 8 or 12 in most of their time there, but ever since your transition to the Big 10, it's been the complete opposite. Tom Osborne is an immortal, and you found out the hard way. You found out real quick following the absolute disintegration from Monty Ball and the Badgers once you made the Big 10 championship. That's about the peak of your time in the conference. The only things that followed were ass whoopings on a weekly basis. Coaches like Bo Pelini and Mike Riley tried to do something, but the best that they could do was the 2016 Music City Bowl runner-up participation ribbon. Ever since, Nebraska failed to even make a bowl. The Scott Frost era was so grotesque that he got a ribbon himself for coaching the best 3-9 team ever. You sucked a lot, but you're the best sucker out there. It took divine intervention to screw off briefly for Matt Rule of all people to finally get Nebraska back to a winning season. It's hard to find a program at the status that fell off harder than this. Once an icon of the sport has been reduced to football brain rot. The fans are brainwashed into believing that they're still national title contenders because they're in an entirely separate dimension from reality. So far apart, you need a satellite to find the basement they reside in. It's about that time for Bo Pelini to let the fans know about it again. The script had to work really hard on a day-to-day basis back in the 1800s to conspire together and create a team so perfectly admit that their coaches are permanently stuck pending allegations. That team is none other than the Maryland Mutant Ninja Turtles, just without the ability to fight or move. Originally known as the Aggies, I think we all know how that turns out. So while it would have been great to just keep it, the Turtles are different in execution. For decades, they were actually a member of everyone's favorite tank conference, and because the ACC has that name for a reason, Maryland managed to be competitive in the conference on some occasions. Remember, this is Maryland we're talking about. But because of their greed, they transitioned to the Big 10, which I'm 70% sure is a move that they regret. They didn't even have the blessing of being in the Big 10 West, as they were stuck playing the top 3 of the conference year in, year out. They were stun-locked from the jump every season. Programs like this usually lean on their morality to be in the conference's good graces, but Maryland had other plans. DJ Durkin can attest to that. Any culture that costs a life is a shitty one that was lucky to not be thrown to the independents. Moments like these leave footprints no coach could ever cover up. Unless you're Brian Kelly. This, along with their own football IBS, kept Maryland from being anything other than a mid-tier doormat. Even a winning season is worthy of a trophy for them, as the peak of their time in the conference is a mayo bath for a coach that's currently sitting on one of the star-level hottest seats in the country. The stadium at halftime is a wasteland. You'd find more people in the theater watching Jurassic World. Currently, the program is stuck in the realm of death. Having no divisions does them little good when they are slowly decaying in favor of basketball. Don't fall for the September bait again is all I can say. They'll start out 4-0 and never win a game again. One of the founding fathers of college football, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights got the honors of winning the first ever college football game. Nowadays, nobody even bothers to spell their name correctly. If you went back in time and told the very first college football team what Rutgers would look like today, they'd have several curse words to say like rats or golly gee willikers, or the current day Rutgers football word Despite being one of the starters of the college football landscape, nobody wants to play in New Jersey, and it shows in their records on the field. It got far worse once they joined the Big East and became one with the word suck. 2006 was the only time the Scarlet Knight faithful ever felt any sort of joy or happiness, as that was their first bowl win in school history. But let's be honest, how big is their fan base? 80% of them are in the marching band or live 5 miles away from campus. Why else would you subject yourself to this? Rutgers was the last of the bunch of turd nuggets to make the jump to the Big Ten, and how they managed to convince the commissioner to let them in is beyond my guess. It'd be like DJ Ukulele trying to convince the Buffalo Bills to let him be a starter. Academics are a thing, but even that only gets you so far. Even if they were a detriment to the program, as Kyle Flood could tell you. To give you an idea of their time in the Big Ten, they finished last 7 of the last 10 times they played in the Big Ten East, lost by 40 on consecutive attempts to the Big Three, and have now obtained a losing overall record because of it. Losing by 78 in any modern college football game is a sense of agony even Kansas fans wince at. What Rutgers fans have to rely on going into 2025 is the second coming of Greg Schiano. The fact he managed to push Rutgers into back-to-back winning seasons deserves a hell of a lot of credit. But can this success be sustained? Or will Rutgers fall back into the Aether once again? In this conference, it's impossible to determine. Best case is 10-2.
No timeouts remaining, clock is under 10.
Gotta hurry now. Throw up the Hail Mary, throw it up, no.
And that was fourth down.
That was fourth down, you gotta throw up the Hail Mary.
That was fourth down, and that's the game.
Well, after all of that, it's pretty easy to understand why the Big Ten has the reputation it does. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and all the baggage that comes with it. This is the reputation the conference has garnered, and until someone else finally jumps into the fray, this will be where they stand. But 11 pieces of trash weren't enough for the can. It could take more. Give it more! Since geography is a non-factor now, the Big Ten brought in 4 teams from the West Coast to add on to the cancer this league already produces. You fed the blob with conference expansion. Let's see how that pans out. The Southern California Condoms. I'm sure you missed the Reggie Bush days. You have to. They serve as a constant reminder of what you could have been over what you've turned into. Once the best thing the Pacific had to offer, the moment Pete Carroll left for the Seahawks, everything went directly into the abyss. They've turned into a program where successful coaches go to not succeed. Like Lane Kiffin, who was fired at the airport for giving up 60 to Arizona State. Steve Sarkisian, who is better at losing games than staying sober. And now Lincoln Riley, which goes without saying based on looking at the football it brings onto the field. More often than not, I get their current team confused with the one I saw under Clay Helton. But unlike those squads, you have the misfortune of playing in the Big Ten, where you have experienced every kind of loss known to man in a single season. The football gods tried to hand you wins against Penn State and Michigan, but you were having none of it. Now you're stuck here with an even lesser chance of making your first ever playoff because of your schedule. Your recruiting class doesn't fool me, it's July. You'll never make it further than a punchline for bad defense because it's Lincoln Riley's entire gimmick. Utah sends their condolences. Since the playoffs beginning, this is the most successful addition to the Big Ten. 2 playoff appearances is even more than Penn State has had. While the program reached its worst state back in 2004, they eventually recovered and turned into a contender for the Pac-12 on various occasions. They even made the national championship back in 2023, getting cucked by the conference they reside in now. You'd think with the most recent success that they would be able to continue it going into 2024. Turns out Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer left a bigger footprint on the season than previously thought. They tried on shoes 6 sizes too big and paid the price through destruction. One of these losses came at the hands of the team they tried running away from. In fact, multiple of them did. You're lucky the fan base isn't doing like what Don James did and quitting on you for leaving them with this incompetence to watch. If you lose Jed the Fish for whatever reason, you'll have many opportunities for another coaching surge. I heard Jimmy Lake is looking. Now, why did you think this was going to be a good idea? Your program doesn't have the history of the other two, nor does it have the recent success. I'm honestly surprised the athletics program still cares about you considering you are just sandbagging the basketball and baseball status. Despite having the most storied stadium in America, your performance on the field reflects its maintenance. Lackluster at best, out of order at worst. Since 1954, you've done nothing but collapse in meaningful moments and the lights are shining the brightest. The program has never seen anything above a 10-win season. And you are often a victim of outside tomfoolery, such as Jim Moore's rampages and Chip Kelly's playbook being completely outdated. Then you had to watch him go on to Ohio State where the playbook suddenly wasn't outdated anymore. Now your only hope for 2025 is in the form of this bumbling shit rag. Selling your soul for this is something I'm sure won't come back to bite you. Certainly not. Maybe just log out till November. The last edition for the Pacific is none other than the Duckies of Oregon, a permanent victim of collapse and disorder at the most inconvenient times imaginable. I said Washington was the most successful addition to the Big Ten and I meant it. Oregon was a historical afterthought with as much of a storied past as the Florida schools, so basically it was non-existent until the Reagan years. It took all the way up until the turn of the century for Oregon to secure a 10-win season. By the time they finally figured out how to win consistently, they had a lot of heartbreaking losses to commit to fill their quota. Like the national championships they were in. That's the worst part. You've never won a national title in college football. Not even a shared or fake UCF one. This statement continues to haunt the Oregon Ducks and has been ever since the program's birth. 2024 could be different though, with wins over Ohio State and Michigan, beating Penn State to secure a Big Ten title, entering the playoffs as a top seed. I think you all know how this ends though. This conference belongs to another team's hands. These hands aren't yours.
These receivers. Making the Judkins again. And there is Smith roaming free. Breaks a tackle. Ohio State strikes quickly from 45 yards.
Montgomery played in that Tennessee game in at left guard.
Off the fake down the middle. Caught in stride. It's Tez who comes in motion. Gabriel threw it off the head. See if they take a shot here. Howard looking to launch. Right down the middle. Smith is wide open.
Big guys to be out for Oregon right now and try to keep them moving.
And the bad news gets worse. Trevion Henderson is loose down the sidelines. All the way to the end zone. Toss sweep. Henderson has blockers. And just Ohio State overwhelming today.
Ohio State takes back their merit and Oregon folds on the big stage once again. Give me a second.
Yep, still blue. If you liked what you saw today, make sure to give this a like and sub up to Squidtard Sports if you haven't already. I'll see you guys next time as always. Love y'all, and of course, power to Tardaria.
Yeah, I get it. 42-17. So funny. It's so freaking
Martinez in trouble. Reverses. Trying to break contain. Martinez up the sideline. Still running. Look at him. Taylor Martinez. What a run. He's got a lane. Martinez. Wow. Taylor Martinez. Touchdown. Huskers. What an athlete. 76 yards.
You might as well be in different leagues, not conferences, different leagues.